Okay, so this is week 2, context environment. This is about design, redesign, and disability, the ADA, curb cut effect, some other stuff. Kind of going back to last week, we're looking at disability theory, seeing that it's history of the disabled, it's history of a lot of discrimination, kind of awful things. We kind of saw some of that thinking, that thinking kind of prevails today. We saw the stuff with the designer babies and the CRISPR technology to redesign babies. CRISPR, I think it's CRISSPR, CRISPR technology, you remember that. How as OTs we have to kind of move beyond those stereotypes, kind of being aware of that, and kind of seeing people as we know, as individuals with these complex needs. Also talk about these different models of disability. Need to know all those well. We gave some good examples last week. The person in the wheelchair on the moral model, medical model, social model of disability, as well as juncture theory. That's all about. The class, we can do like a discussion around different disabilities and that sort of stuff. Inspiration for supposed to be Crip Camp. Here's our questions for today. A couple of great videos to check out for sure if you're just listening to this. Disability and adaptive design. Medically focused adaptive equipment is very generic. And you think of like a wheelchair or these clothes. It's cost effective. It's also very stigmatizing. There's something wrong with you, you're disabled. Very noticeable, very standardized. And in other cases, it's very market controlled. The price can be really, really high, usually inflated, because there just isn't much of an open market like we think of wheelchairs. There's like only, one or two places in the whole of city of Bangor that you can get a wheelchair. It's not like clothes shopping or shoes shopping. It's a tight market, controlled, you need a referral, insurance, that sort of thing. So it really can lead to inflation of the prices. This idea of redesigning or unbranding device is kind of uncoupling it from its kind of body-focused impairment. Redesigning adaptive equipment. Different examples. You think about glasses. They're kind of redesigning glasses. It's almost a hip thing, popular thing to have glasses now. That are different colors, different designs. I've seen some athletes actually wear fake glasses because they just like the looks of them. Think about braces, different colors of the braces, a lot more popular with kids. Think about kinesio tape. It's like it used to be just something, a medical white tape, and now it's this bright colored design stuff that's, again, almost a fashion statement. When you think of designing in general, Apple computers are great with that, with their iPhones, how they design them to be very sleek, art-like, and popular. Cars are like that as well, race cars. Gives them more of a beauty, wide appeal, very individualized, more of a human fit, kind of more of a consumer-driven choice. This is how we're thinking about redesigning. And your assignment is to make a device or to kind of design an existing device. We're going to kind of try that for a class assignment, that redesign kind of idea. Redesign focuses, again, it's person-focused, moving from kind of isolation, segregation to kind of mainstream. Think of this example with prosthetic. Again, it's very chic, mainstream, kind of gets the focus away from the disability, the impairment, to style. It's like a fashion statement. From rigid standardization to kind of interchangeable, and from noticeable, unattractive to humane, attractive. Emphasizes fit, comfort, use, and positive, individualized identification, versus the opposite. I'll give you some examples kind of what it's talking about. This is a helmet. Somebody has seizures, they're on the floor, they need to protect their head, very important. But it's very medical looking. These are also helmets. Cheerleading, I think how aesthetic, that's a huge part of cheerleading, how it's aesthetically pleasing. Don't necessarily want to be wearing these. I don't think she probably does either. But these are helmets as well. So it's kind of redesign kind of thinking. Wheelchairs, it's very stigmatizing. versus sleek, kind of artsy kind of chairs. Doing a lot more with prosthetics now about making them individualized, designing matching clothes and colors and preferences versus this kind of thing. Canes with colors and stickers versus the kind of the medicalized thing, matching her outfit, kind of getting more in sync with humanness, what really fits our function, our needs, versus this kind of thing that sticks out. More examples of this. These are like a neck collar, back brace. Here's a prosthetic, or like a splint orthotic. I think of the orthotics that you made and the t-shirts that I made. They're very, very medical looking. You walk in, you have that orthotic on, and it's like, ooh, what is going on with your hand or your finger? Versus this, it's kind of like, wow, this is kind of stylish, kind of slick, it matches her outfit, a different kind of mindset. Here's some more with it. This is a cane, looks like bones. It's kind of an assistive device that folds up into a knitting thing and a little table. Kind of redesign it. Think of a bathroom, accessible bathroom, very slick. This is wheelchair accessible bathroom. There's all these different kinds of looking at things and kind of redesigning things. Here's the group activity. Okay, so kind of shifting towards ADA, disability unemployment in the ADA. It was the Rehab Act of 1973. ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, kind of built on that. That was the first time they kind of got rights to disabled in terms of access to public buildings, public transportation, buses, education. If it had government, federal money involved, it had to be accessible. And the ADA kind of expanded it to everywhere. So everybody in the whole society had to make their buildings, whatever, accessible to all, was the ideal. The primary goal of the ADA, kind of lose this, but was kind of to eliminate the financial bell curve for the disabled. So in that bell curve, in this case, the able-bodied population makes a lot more money, a lot more access to housing and education. The levels are just dramatically higher compared to the disabled community, making a lot less money, higher unemployment, less housing, less education. So they want to kind of flatten the curve, make society more equitable for everybody. To end discrimination against individuals and disabilities and bring persons with disabilities into the economic and social mainstream. That's when we're kind of flattening that curve, so everybody's kind of on the same plane, you can all compete for the same jobs and that sort of thing, equally. Key definitions from the ADA. Some of these are kind of grayish. These are essential things to know as an OT for your board exam, kind of moving forward. If you're disabled, you must be able to perform the essential functions of the job. To qualify for the job, can you do the essential functions of the job? Think about teaching. Could I do the essential functions of the job teaching in a wheelchair? Yes, I probably could. Maybe some things I couldn't do, but I could do the essential parts of the job. Would require reasonable accommodations, considering that there's a ramp and there's a wheelchair elevator here. Those are kind of already there. Does it cause these two kind of married together? Reasonable accommodations, undue hardship, and it depends on the size of the business. Not really unreasonable or undue hardship for Hudson to have ramps and a elevator, but a smaller business, maybe not the case. It'd be too much for them. It would put them out of business to build their own elevator for employers. When you're hiring somebody with a disability, you have to really focus on what they can do versus how they do it. It doesn't really matter how they do it, but can they do it or not do it, sort of thing. Essential functions are based on the employer's judgment. Judgment is a key thing. That's why a lot of times it ends up in court. It's kind of grayish. Also based on a job description, amount of time spent performing each task, consequences of not performing a particular task, work experience of the applicant, and is there kind of collective bargaining unit, is there a union involved? Undue hardship is determined by nature and cost of the hiring the disabled in light of adaptations, tax credits, outside funding sources, financial resources and overall size of the facility, composition, structure, functions of the workforce, impact of accommodation on employers' ability to conduct business. ADA eligibility criteria qualifications for the ADA is based on medical, embodied history of impairment. The more visible the disability, the more weight it has in courts. People with more hidden disabilities, think of something like chronic fatigue syndrome, chemical sensitivities, mental illnesses, harder for them to get accommodations to meet their needs, kind of thing. Good and bad of the ADA. A lot of good things around it. There's obviously now greater physical access for disabled with mobility and vision-related disabilities, with the ramps and the elevators and the braille, all that sort of stuff. Curb cuts becoming the norm almost for most public buildings. And there's a process to appeal. You don't feel like it's meeting your needs, to the letter of the law, you can take it to court, that sort of thing. Kind of the drawbacks. When it is taken to court, and it costs money, to hire a lawyer and to do the whole process. And usually, if you're disabled and you're at work, you don't have that kind of money versus a larger company which has a lot more resources. The overwhelming majority of ADA appeals have been in favor of the employer, not the employee, not the disabled person trying to advocate and get that access. But if the employer says it's going to cause an undue hardship, I don't want to do this. Usually in court they're winning, overwhelmingly so. The number of disabled receiving disability-related Social Security, those who are unemployed, not working, has more than doubled since the ADA. Increased cost of more than $808 billion to taxpayers. And this is data, I'm sure it's a lot more. So the ADA was supposed to flatten the bell curve, so everybody would have access to work, and the disabled would be less in unemployment, unemployed, making more money. Not the case. In fact, the opposite is the case. More disabled or on disability than ever before. Really hasn't been much change in terms of the unemployment rate and comparative salaries. This kind of shows you that. It's kind of a 12-year time frame. Unemployment rate really hasn't changed since ADA. Able-bodied, it has gotten better. You can see the difference. If you're able-bodied, you're twice as likely to be employed versus disabled. The gap in salaries has grown between the able-bodied and the disabled, 37% gap. Gap in salaries between disabled is odd as 37%. I was disabled made 37% less than the able-bodied. Work in the middle of disabled. Kind of disabled legislation. Social Security, these are different kinds of legislation. A lot of kinds of different programs around work and disabled, trying to, again, close this gap, get the disabled out into the workforce, off unemployment, disability, all that sort of stuff. They all have certain characteristics to them, whether kind of good and kind of bad. They all have very limited to no coverage for insurance. So a lot of cases when you go on to these programs, you coming off the program, this is insurance. Limited back to work, training, disincentive to work, insurance, daycare, that costs, that sort of thing. So kind of the bottom line is it's kind of like an all or nothing focus for a lot of these programs. If you work too much, you lose the program, the little money that you're getting, you lose your insurance, that sort of thing. So it's almost a disincentive to work. Limited supporting resources, think of daycare, think of education, training. Again, it's focused, all the money is focused on qualification and giving you money if you don't qualify or don't qualify versus getting you to work. Another reason for a high unemployment rate for the disabled is probably a lot of myths about the disabled, that it's going to cost us so much money, cause all these kinds of problems, where it's actually the exact opposite. It makes your workforce more diverse, makes your service more accessible to more people. That's kind of a cost multiplier effect. Other studies have shown that usually it's very little cost, minor cost to actually accommodate. So here's an example of this kind of laws in the real life, kind of rubber hits the road kind of thing. This young woman, she's in law school, Georgetown. She is quite disabled. She needs PCAs, personal care assistants, every day to get herself dressed, probably bathe, that sort of thing. She can't survive without them. Without them, she's in a nursing home. They're paid through her Medicaid. But she has to make less than $10,000 a year to qualify to get these PCAs. she makes more, she's out of luck. And when she was going to law, she wanted to do these internships where she'd get paid, I'm guessing more than $10,000 a year. She couldn't do those because if she did those, she would have to live in a nursing home, and it would just set off this cycle of problems. So again, it's that all or nothing kind of mentality that can be quite restricting to a lot of people. Other kind of ideas, solutions, kind of problems. Curb cuts. A lot of history around curb cuts. This is what we're talking about with the curb cut. Here's like the curb. See how it's kind of sloped out, so you can kind of access it with a stroller, that sort of thing. These were not the norm back in the 60s and 70s. A lot of activists, people in wheelchairs, were just so upset that they couldn't get onto the curb without, a major deal. So what they did, or this Michael Parchovas and this group did around, they made their own curb cuts. They kind of poured cement in there, and they were really active and kept pushing this. And eventually it became, common law, ADA, and all that sort of stuff. And they found that it's actually good for a lot of people. They call it like a force multiplier, not just people in wheelchairs, but obviously baby strollers, pushing carts, skateboarders, luggage, even joggers, the elderly, that sort of thing. It's an example how you can accommodate for one group, you can really open up your business and your world to a lot of other kind of groups. Okay, here's the questions, and here's what's going on for lab and discussion.